The president of my HOA was illegally entering my cabin to write me up. What she didn't know was that the state's most powerful lawyer was already sitting at my kitchen table, and my phone was already recording. It was a trap she walked right into. It all began with a sound. The first thing I heard was the snap of the deadbolt. Loud, sharp, wrong. Then came the creak of the front door. Someone was inside my lake cabin. I slipped my phone out of my pocket and tapped record. Through the frosted kitchen window, I caught a glimpse of her. Karen Holloway, president of the Lakeside Bluffs HOA, hair shellacked into a blonde helmet, clipboard tucked under one arm like a sheriff's badge. She wasn't knocking. She was striding in. The irony. 10 feet behind me sat the state attorney general, sipping burnt coffee at my kitchen table. We were mid-briefing on the HOA's latest attempt to claim a right of inspection over my private shoreline. His security detail waited outside by the SUVs. Karen had no idea. She cleared her throat like a substitute teacher. "This is a compliance visit," she announced to no one in particular, scanning the living room like she was inspecting contraband. I stayed still, just out of her line of sight, letting the doorbell cam pick up every word. Trespassing was bad. Trespassing during a state meeting? That was a career-defining mistake. Karen's crusade had started 3 months earlier with something petty. Trash bins. She mailed me a violation notice for visible refuse containers because my bin sat by the gravel lane for 3 hours past pickup. Never mind that half the street did the same. Next came the dock drama. My family's dock has been anchored in the same position since 1987, clearly outside the HOA's jurisdiction, according to the original plat map. But Karen had decided that shared shoreline aesthetics gave the board authority to order a redesign. Then it escalated to gate sabotage. Twice that summer, I found the padlock on my entry gate jammed with epoxy. The deputy shook his head and filed another incident report, but without proof, it was just harassment in the dark. That's when I got serious. I swapped the motion lights for infrared trail cams, installed a dash cam on my ATV, and ran a discreet air tag inside the lock housing. Every trespass would now leave a digital footprint. The AG meeting was scheduled weeks in advance. Karen wasn't supposed to know about it. I'd kept the circle small, just me, my lawyer, and the state office. But HOAs love gossip, and someone must have tipped her off that something big was happening at my cabin that morning. She must have assumed it was a construction inspection or a dock contractor. In her mind, this was her chance to catch me non-compliant and deliver a theatrical violation notice in person. She had no idea she was about to incriminate herself, on camera, in front of the state's top legal officer. I stepped into the doorway. "Morning, Karen. You're in my house." She jumped, then quickly rearranged her face into an officious smile. "Mr. Walker, as president of the HOA, I'm authorized to conduct compliance checks under Article..." I cut her off. "Article 7, Section B. Right of inspection applies to common areas, not privately deeded property. You're trespassing." The Attorney General walked into view just then, tall, deliberate, wearing that expression bureaucrats reserve for people about to regret their life choices. "Is there a reason you entered this residence without consent, ma'am?" he asked. For the first time in years, Karen didn't have a comeback. Her eyes flicked from his badge to the security team outside, then back to me. The phone in my hand blinked red. Recording. The doorbell come LED blinked too, and out by the gate, the AirTag pinged her car's location, timestamp locked. Every piece of evidence was lining up like dominoes. I didn't know it yet, but this stunt was going to unravel everything. The fake violation scheme, the secret board votes, the illegal inspections, all of it. And it started with the sound of a deadbolt snapping. After Karen's abrupt encounter with the Attorney General, she retreated fast, heels clicking on the porch like a retreating drill sergeant. She mumbled something about needing to consult the board and drove off in her silver Lexus, leaving a plume of gravel dust curling behind her. The Attorney General's security detail exchanged glances. They didn't need my explanation. The doorbell footage was already uploading to my cloud storage, and my Wi-Fi trail cam system had caught 3 separate angles of her forced entry. I poured another cup of burnt coffee. That, I told the AG, was our HOA president. He gave a slow, knowing nod. I'd keep every second of that footage. You're going to need it. I already planned to. That afternoon, I began the evidence hunt in earnest. First stop, the plat maps. My grandfather had kept the original 1980s survey documents in a fireproof box. I scanned the shoreline boundaries, dock permits, and easements line by line. Karen's inspection authority claim hinged on the HOA having some form of jurisdiction over the shoreline. But the plat maps were crystal clear. My cabin sat on an exempt parcel, predating the HOA by 4 years. Next, I dug up the HOA bylaws. Article 7, Section B, just as I'd cited, limited inspections strictly to common property. Section F even stated that board members must provide 72-hour written notice before entering any property for maintenance emergencies. Karen had done neither. I highlighted each relevant clause, tagged them with sticky notes, and organized the PDFs by section. My evidence binder was starting to look like something out of a courtroom drama. Then came the digital trail. I pulled GPS data from the AirTag I'd hidden inside my gate lock. It showed Karen's Lexus stopping at my property line at 9:43 a.m., matching the doorbell cam timestamp to the second. From the cabin's interior security cam, I extracted still frames of her stepping across the threshold, clipboard raised like she was issuing a citation. I even zoomed in on the HOA logo on her name badge for ID clarity. Chain of custody was key, so I exported everything with metadata intact and logged each file with time, date, and source. If this went to court, or the state regulator, I wanted 0 gaps. By evening, my kitchen table looked like a war room. Plat maps fanned out, HOA bylaws annotated, USB drives labeled, and a printed violation timeline running across the table like a detective's stringboard. That's when I called in expert allies. First was Linda Perez, my real estate lawyer. She's the kind of attorney who quotes case law casually, like recipes. I emailed her the footage and documents. 30 minutes later, she called back, laughing softly. She just committed criminal trespass, Linda said, and did it in front of the Attorney General. Walker, this is a gift. We'll file a cease and desist and prepare an injunction. I want that board sweating by next week. Next, I called Tom Henderson, a retired county surveyor who helped me with dock permits years ago. Tom knew every shoreline pin on this lake by heart. If they're claiming jurisdiction, I'll pull the 1987 survey and testify myself, he said. She's bluffing, son. Classic HOA power grab. Finally, I looped in Deputy Callahan, the same deputy who'd handled the gate epoxy reports. He reviewed the video and whistled. She's done, he said. We can escalate this with the DA if needed. That footage is clean as it gets. 3 days later, Linda and I delivered a formal notice packet to the HOA board via certified mail. The packet included criminal trespass footage with timestamps, survey maps showing private property boundaries, annotated HOA bylaws, and a drafted cease and desist letter naming Karen personally. And for good measure, we CC'd the State HOA Regulatory Commission. Karen's bravado had vanished overnight. The neighborhood gossip mill churned. Apparently, she'd been telling board members that the Walker property was technically common shoreline, and she was just enforcing the rules. But now, with the Attorney General's office aware, her story was about to collapse under the weight of paperwork and video evidence. I wasn't done. Evidence was only phase 1. Next came the sting. The sting began quietly. No neon signs, no confrontations, just a scheduled HOA board meeting 2 weeks later, and me, biding my time. I knew Karen couldn't resist doubling down. She'd been embarrassed in front of state officials, cornered legally, and whispered about at every cul-de-sac barbecue. People like her don't retreat. They try to rewrite the narrative. So I let her. 2 nights before the meeting, my neighbor Paul texted me a heads up. "Karen's been telling folks you violated dock codes. Says the board will vote to fine you big at the next meeting." Perfect. That meant she was going to push the same bogus jurisdiction claim in public, on record, despite the cease and desist. And that was exactly what I needed. I loaded my binder, printed copies of the survey plats, transferred the original trespass footage to 2 separate USB drives, and packed my body cam, mounted discreetly on the strap of my satchel. Then I made one more call, Deputy Callahan. "Mind swinging by the meeting Tuesday?" I asked. He chuckled. "You expecting fireworks?" "Let's just say," I replied, "I like having a witness who wears a badge." The Lakeside Bluffs HOA board met in the community center. Fluorescent lights humming, folding chairs lined in uneven rows, the smell of burnt coffee lingering. Karen sat at the head table like a magistrate, gavel at the ready, expression sharp enough to cut glass. She opened with perfunctory updates, landscaping budgets, pool filter repairs, before clearing her throat dramatically. "Next on the agenda," she announced, "the Walker property shoreline violations." She launched into a speech about uniform dock aesthetics and HOA oversight, waving a manila folder like it contained divine authority. Half the room shifted uncomfortably. A few nodded, though less enthusiastically than usual. When she finally called for a vote to issue fines, I stood up slowly. "Before you vote," I said, sliding the survey plats onto the projector table, "you might want to review the actual jurisdiction lines." Tom, the retired surveyor, stepped up beside me, nodding to the board. "This is the original 1987 plat," he explained, pointer tapping the shoreline boundary. "This parcel was recorded 4 years before the HOA existed. No easements, no common areas, no shared shoreline. Legally, this cabin isn't under HOA dock jurisdiction." Karen's face tightened, but she pressed on. "The board has authority to—" I cut in, calm and clear. "No, it doesn't. And if anyone doubts that, here's footage of the HOA president entering my private property without notice or consent." I hit play. On the projector, Karen appeared, bold as ever, pushing through my door, while the Attorney General sat in the kitchen. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Another whispered, "She's so done." Deputy Callahan stood quietly at the back, arms crossed, unmistakable in uniform. His presence made the footage feel even heavier. Karen tried to recover. "This is being taken out of context." Linda, my lawyer, rose from the audience. "Context is irrelevant. Article 7, Section B. You violated your own bylaws, state trespass law, and ignored a cease and desist. And you did it during a meeting with the Attorney General. You've exposed the entire board to liability." The room went silent. The board's treasurer whispered to the secretary. The secretary whispered to another member. Within minutes, the board called for a closed session. Karen's gavel taps echoed nervously as they retreated to the back room. 15 minutes later, they emerged pale and tight-lipped. The treasurer cleared his throat. "The board has decided to rescind all actions related to the Walker property. Furthermore, we are scheduling an emergency election to address leadership concerns." The twist came a week later. The State HOA Regulatory Commission opened a formal investigation, not just into Karen's trespass, but into financial irregularities tied to her tenure as president. Apparently, our sting had prompted other homeowners to come forward, missing landscaping funds, phantom maintenance contracts, secret votes. Karen's house of cards didn't just collapse, it imploded. By early fall, she'd resigned in disgrace, facing civil penalties and potential criminal charges. The HOA board underwent a complete overhaul, with new members vowing transparency and legal compliance. I didn't throw a party. I just replaced the front door deadbolt and took a quiet walk down to the dock, coffee in hand, watching the lake catch the orange light of sunset. One trespass, one camera, one airtight binder. That's all it took to turn years of petty harassment into a legal reckoning. If you ever face an HOA bully, remember, outrage is temporary, but evidence is permanent. Know your plats, know your bylaws, record everything, and never underestimate the power of a calm, well-timed sting. If you've dealt with an HOA nightmare, drop your story in the comments. If you think ordinary people don't have power, think again. Subscribe for more real-life strategies to fight back.